as singing, and singing especially with others in a group, has been shown to enhance learning and acquisition of new skills separate from musical learning and singing. In other words, it seems that learning how to play an instrument and singing are a gateway to neuroplasticity. And this is, again, supported by neuroimaging data. Some of the more striking of those data are that children that learned how to play 1 to 3 instruments when they were a kid, or that sang in a choir or a group, or that were taught to sing solo for that matter, show up to 30% greater connectivity within this particular brain network that links the 2 hemispheres of the brain. Now, as soon as I say 2 hemispheres of the brain, it starts drawing up a lot of ideas in people's heads, mainly derived from pop psychology, that, there are left-brained people and right-brained people. I've touched on this before, but I want to make this abundantly clear again now. Most of what you've heard about so-called left-brained people or right-brained people is complete and total nonsense. It's myth. There are some functions in the brain that are lateralized to the left or the right hemisphere, in particular prosody, the sort of lilting and falling of speech and in singing is highly lateralized in the brain. Other aspects of language can be lateralized in the brain, but really if you hear that certain people are more emotional or certain people are more logical based on right brain, left brain stuff, that stuff is completely false. It's complete garbage, in fact. It's not based in any real solid data. So when I say that learning an instrument or learning how to sing young or even as an adult is beneficial for increasing the connectivity between the 2 sides of the brain, what that increased connectivity between the 2 sides of the brain, which is, by the way, mediated through a structure called the corpus callosum, is not about enhancing one's emotional capacity or logical capacity. It's really about increasing the capacity of all brain circuits, or at least the brain circuits that are connected up directly with the corpus callosum, which includes many brain circuits for things like cognition, language learning, speech, mathematics. A lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of musicians are also especially adept at mathematics. And for you musicians, you're probably nodding, of course, right? Because music is grounded in theory that has basis in math and in physics, something that we will address in a future episode about harmonics, etc. When children or adults learn how to play a musical instrument or several, or how to sing and play musical instruments, that increased connectivity in the corpus callosum is essentially providing multiple highways of option for learning all sorts of things. So it's something that I highly encourage, so much so that I intend to finally learn how to play an instrument. I've got a particular instrument in mind that I've wanted to learn how to play for a very long time, but based on my prior experience with trying to learn an instrument, and because I like to consider myself a considerate person, I intend to do this more or less in isolation from people and indeed from animals as well. And for those of you that don't have the time or energy or desire to learn new forms of music, you'll be perhaps delighted to know that just listening to novel forms of music, and in particular when you listen to novel forms of music and you pay attention to that music, not just letting it play in the background, that too has been demonstrated to expand the brain's capacity for neuroplasticity, its ability to modify itself and make it better at learning other sorts of things, both cognitive and physical. So I highly encourage you to listen to the music you love. I certainly love to listen to the music that I delight in and have for so many years. But there's also strong scientific support to encourage listening to new forms of music that hopefully you will like, but nonetheless, the mere foraging for and listening to novel forms of music itself seems to activate brain circuitry in a way that allows for better learning and comprehension of all sorts of things. So today we've been talking about music in the brain, and I confess this is an enormous topic, so much so that I had to discard with entire sets of data and discussion around, for instance, the mathematical structure of music and how that relates to the mathematical structure of firing of neurons. We touched on this a little bit, however, in the context of certain frequencies of sounds that we hear, creating certain frequencies of neuronal firing and activation in the brain. If you just think about that, how amazing that is. It's literally like the brain playing your neurons like a piano. This is not what happens when you smell a particular odor or taste a particular taste or see a particular face or visual stimulus. Incredible things happen within those senses as well, but there is something oh so fundamental and incredible about music and its ability to tap into our neural circuitry and our neurochemistry in ways that shift our emotional states and our motivational states. So we talked about ways that music can be leveraged to shift our emotional and motivational states. Again, not as a way to reduce music to its reductionist parts, but rather to to help us gain understanding into how the brain responds to music and how we can leverage music of all kinds, with and without lyrics, how we can balance the contrast between